Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Crows never lie. In the darkness, they simply remember what the light refuses to reveal. Created by LordeStarfox. When Crows Speak.
My creatures of the night, yes, you are tuning in to the pilot episode of When Crows Speak. Yes, the purpose of this podcast is to dive into well-known creepypastas, bring up all the information about them. Then, at the end, my hosts or guests, we will be putting in the information to the audience as to why there is no relevant aspects of quality anything to back up the creepy pasta. It's nothing more than, yes, a creepy pasta. If you do not know that term, it's a quick little Google/YouTube search. You will be able to figure that out for sure. Yet, William White, one of the official scientists of the Midnight Society, is already sitting around the late night fire as we again burn the midnight timber into the early hours of the morning. We are going to be talking about the black-eyed teenagers. Yes, Mr. White, there are some contracts that are overdue, and I am tired of waiting for payment. Are you ready to take a walk into the darkness tonight?
Let's go, man.
Great stuff. I am going to give a brief summary before we toss Mr. White, the great old Mike. He will plug in any pieces I have missed. Then, as stated, the latter part of the episode, we are going to be bringing up reasonings why there is no truth to this. The black-eyed teenagers are a quote-unquote modern urban legend about supposed supernatural creatures resembling teenagers with solid black eyes. These entities are often encountered on doorsteps, hitchhikers. You must invite these individuals inside for them to then cause you harm. Time out real quick. That sounds like something out of a vampire movie. Hey, Robert, come inside. Oh no, attack, right? Okay. Theories about their nature range from ghosts to demons to vampires to aliens to disturbed, possessed people, but many view the legend as nothing more than a myth born from the internet. Characteristics, appearance, they seem humanish, yet they have very pale and unnatural skin. They tend to try and not really make contact directly with their pitch black eyes with yours. They also seem to have a very strange monotone, unnaturally mature sounding voice for a teenager. They are reported to be wearing outdated or very strange clothing for the time frames or for anyone their age realm that they would be wearing. A key element of this legend is that, again, you must invite them into your truck, into your house, into anywhere for them to cause you any sort of damage. Mr. White, what do you think about the whole black-eyed teenagers in general? Also, do you have anything else that I have missed in that summary right there?
I mean, you pretty much summarized it very well. Yeah, this whole thing, it's very interesting. It's very creepy because the people tend to experience a lot of discomfort around the uncanny valley, situations that are close to normal but are very not normal. For instance, think about if you were to see a duck in a pond, but it's not the size of a normal duck. It's the size of a large dog, right? Um, well, a duck's fairly harmless, but I would be kind of freaked out by that because that is so outside of the normal, right? So people are seeing who are generally, we don't view as a threat. We have a natural instinct to protect and help and tolerate them, right? But these individuals are giving off a very negative vibe, a very threatening aura. And then, of course, you have the phenomenon of the black eyes, which that's the main thing that's outside of normal, right? That's the and you catch their eyes and they're pitch black, and most of the accounts make it sound like the entire eye is black. It's not just the iris that's black; it's the sclera, the white part of the eye. The whole eye is black. So yeah, that's I can see why it's definitely caught on, because people enjoy the thrill of scary stories. I know I do. I love listening to YouTube videos that just have account after account after account of creepy situations and whatnot. Now, as far as dissecting it, from what I gleaned, the first really reported story came from Abilene, Texas. There's a man who later on became a journalist who encountered two of these individuals. Um, and I mean that was definitely, the internet existed, but it was that early internet, right? Things didn't quite catch on and become memes and go viral in that era so much. But then it seems like the stories popped back up in the 20 teens, and became a lot more common to see online. Now, my thought on that is, I don't know, what the man in 1996 in Abilene, Texas, really experienced. Myself, I wasn't there. Now, this is just something. It's a theory of mine, but there was a TV series, but very popular, very long-running TV series. I think it had like 20 seasons. I watched every single season. It was called Supernatural. Are you familiar with it?
Well, yeah, nerd out, of course,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah. Sam and Dean Winchester fighting evil, all across the country. It was pretty awesome. Now, in Supernatural, when someone becomes demon possessed, their eyes can turn. Well, the demons reveal themselves. Yeah, obviously, they're incognito most of the time, but when they want to reveal themselves, their eyes will flick to pure black. My thought, as far as the recent, uptick of people telling these stories, reporting these things, whatever, may have something to do with that being in the floating pool of public consciousness that surrounds all of us. Um, and that was just one thought I had on the matter. And you're right, the lore behind them sounds very vampire-esque, but of course, it may not just be vampires. I mean, for instance, there are almost no accounts of dogmen being in someone's house. I've heard a couple, but for the most part, this big 600, 800-pound creature that could easily rip your door off its hinges, punch a hole through your wall, break your window, whatever, scratches at the door, taps at the window, scratches at the siding. Right now, why? I don't know why. But if we're supposing that these things are real, maybe there's some sort of cosmic law they have to follow where they can't enter someone's home like a vampire, um, unless they're invited in. Now, of course, when you have someone knocking on your door at a late hour of the night and it's cold outside and you're concerned for their safety, your instinct may very well be, come on in. And if it were a big, wide, thick man like me, 6'4", 250 plus pounds, and I knock on someone's door at midnight, I don't think very many people are going to invite me in, and I wouldn't invite myself in, so it's definitely, I can see why it's caught on, why it's captured the public's eye. I don't necessarily buy into it myself at all, but because just like Slender Man, just like Siren Head, just like so many of these um, internet memes that have then caught on, it does to me feel like it did just pop up in the 20 teens. Did seem to kind of follow the viral path of so many other online, creepypasta Reddit stories that then just get copy pasted and emulated over and over again. But kick it back to you. How do you feel about it?
Listen to all that great stuff right there, for sure. Pretty gnarly. Before I actually add some more dirt on top of this. It is very interesting how you had mentioned with some of the possession aspects, something I dive into, something I'm aware of, and other members of the science team do pay attention to. Yeah, that could be something that would potentially make some sense. The only thing about that, though, is if it was some sort of demonic entity, you think it would be aware of what teenagers would have been rocking for clothing and such, right?
True. I listen to a bunch of the creepy pastas, and a lot of them have that same pattern that they didn't talk like a normal talk, right? So
Right. Also, one of the scientists for the Midnight Society, Dr. Dennis Carroll, has a really interesting hypothesis he's been working on. What if these darker entities latch on to things that they know, per se fear us, right? Like werewolves in Hollywood, zombies, or now Slender Man, or things that black-eyed teenagers, could they then take on those forms? The only thing that lacks in that, though, is like I said, I mean, why are they rocking old school clothing that's
right.
outdated and talking strange?
Unless they're, like I said, unless they have to follow certain cosmic laws, essentially to give people a chance, right? To use their own sound judgment and wisdom to differentiate between something that's evil and something that's normal, right? I don't know. I don't know if these cosmic laws that exist. I don't know what they are, but stuff like that has been theorized. If there are hidden powers that control our destiny on Earth and manipulate everything, that they at least believe they're required by some sort of a karmic law to warn people first, even if the warnings are very subtle and most people aren't going to pick up on them.
Mm.
And as far as the other things you mentioned, there is, and I kind of do believe in this aspect of things in general. I am a firm believer that people do have a sixth sense, and for the most part, it is um, paralyzed, it is numbed, it is dormant and asleep in most of us, and occasionally it may tingle and wake up a little bit. I mean, how many times it's happened to me? A bunch, where I think of someone, 10 seconds later they call me. Well,
Hmm.
what do you think that is? To me, I think that's they were thinking about me, and somehow my brain felt that thought, and then the phone call happens in the 10 seconds it takes to find my number on their phone and call, right? Um, so I do think people have some sort of a sixth sense. Now there's the concept of the tulpa, and I think the tulpa comes from like Nepal or somewhere in southern Asia. And the tulpa is this idea that things can be formed from thoughts. They're called thought forms. They can even essentially be created into our reality by thoughts. Well, if you get millions of people thinking a thought, believing a thought, that's a lot of energy put into that thought form. And there's the whole Slender Man thing, right? That was most definitely an internet meme. No one had ever talked about it previously, right? And then after it kind of goes viral, you have the Slender Man. Those two girls tried to, end their friend's life, um, because they thought that somehow that would, that was what the Slender Man wanted them to do. Anyway, there's some weird stuff like that, and then people have claimed to have seen an entity similar to Slender Man um, since then. Which is it out there? I don't know. Is it possible that humanity's psychic subconscious, when you get millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people thinking something, you know, even believing in something, that it doesn't come into existence? Could very well be. I don't know. So by creating these creepypastas and memes and having them go viral, are we essentially, opening doorways to, or perhaps giving entities a a blueprint, a design, an idea of how to appear to us to most terrorize us? Maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
That's pretty much what some of these other brilliant minds are suggesting, along with your brilliant mind right there. I don't know enough about any of that, yet in theory, as you just stated, seems to all make logical sense. Meaning, quick little example, I feel like I'm on the right path, doing my YouTube and such. And when I'm editing all the time and I look up, it will be like 11:11 or 1:11 in the mornings or 3:33 and things like that. Interesting
Sure.
stuff for sure.
Yeah, yeah. There's all sorts of I don't want to call them synchronicities. That's what they're called. Synchronicities in life. Things that just kind of line up in a weird way, and are some might call coincidences, but um, oftentimes are more significant than a coincidence. Have a bigger impact on us. So synchronicities, that might be an interesting topic for another show, because there's some crazy stuff going on with synchronicities for sure.
Right? So gnarly. All right, Mr. White, you ready now to throw a little bit more extra dirt on this or what?
Let's do it.
Here is the part that is going to disappoint people that really want to buy into this. The black eyed teenagers are considered by most scientific based and most supernatural, paranormal based investigators to be nothing more than a product of fear and storytelling that has spread throughout the internet. The earliest widely shared story reportedly was from 1998 and came from a journalist named Brian Bethel, whose account may have been inspired by teenagers using black colored contact lenses as a prank. Before I finish right there, that's not too far fetched to think that
Sure.
people could be playing pranks, and also aesthetics have been being used for quite a long time by rock stars such as Donna Ashes. Well, they do play into the deep seated fears of darkness inside of most people, right? For sure, especially if something perceived to be innocent then becomes terrifying.
Hmm.
The big issue now is the lack of evidence, meaning there is nothing. Okay. There are no images, there are no videos, there are no footprints, there is nothing at all except for testimonial. But also with the testimonial, when you start to dive into the testimonial aspects, it's really hard to track down any of the people, meaning could it just be a testimonial that was passed on? I have only heard one case where it actually occurred inside of an elderly couple's house where the gentleman invited these teenagers in and then became very sick and ill afterwards.
Hmm.
Yet, besides that, though, I can't even verify if that occurred. It's kind of hearsay throughout the good old internet. How do you feel about all that, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the most logical explanation, is it's some form of a prank. And people talk about feeling this terrible, horrible feeling when they encounter them. Now the question is, memory can be a little bit squishy. So did they feel that way before or after they saw the eyes, right? So you're probably going to be a little freaked. Your heart's going to jump. Well, now when you're recalling the event, did you know recall it correctly? Did you recall that the creepy aspect of it happened after you saw the eyes or before? So even the aura could be explained that way. As for that story, and I heard that one too, of the elderly couple, the guy invited them in. um you know all we have is the account. Now, but supposing something like that did happen, we don't even know if the illness that he suffered was actually related, or if it just coincided um, with the encounter. Because obviously elderly people tend to have more health issues than younger people. So um, hard to say for sure.
It all just falls into creepy pastas online, man.
All you have to do is look at the weird real life trends that have started because of the internet. The weird creepy clown sightings. Several years ago. Um, people are bored. you know, People want to get in on the fun. These social media influencers who do weird stuff. In cities. Just to get attention. All of that is just kind of that human nature of seeking a little bit of excitement. And then, of course, the likes or shares or subscriptions, on social media because you did such a thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, it could very well be something that kind of inspired copycat stuff. in the 20 teens, maybe there were people who were seeing some creepy black eyes deliberately trying to freak people out.
Man, what the heck? So gnarly. Also, when you brought up the clowns, that brings more credence to the aspect of monkey see, monkey do, right? Meaning
Hmm.
if someone had heard about that whole lore, then why would they not necessarily be out trying to troll or prank people?
Hmm.
Meaning this is on a different level. I've always dressed kind of like a rock star, but then when I see people like Jeff Hardy or some of these rock bands I listen to, well, what do you think it does? It gives me more ideas to mess around with my
There you go.
aesthetics and such, right? Pretty much the same example right there as you saying people wanting to get in on the fun. Where are you gonna pretty much sit on this as we are starting to tie this up?
Well, I'm thinking that's a very real possibility. How about that? I all I can do is kind of speculate and theorize. Um, as far as the clowns, yeah, that like went on for I think it really hit in 2016, and then basically stopped by the end of the year. I've seen some videos of people deliberately dressing up as creepy clowns and terrorizing people in public, and or people who've encountered them and actually just kind of not acted afraid and ignored them, and nothing bad happens. It's just some weirdo dressed up like a clown. As far as the go, I mean, it could be something paranormal. I think the most likely thing is that it's not. But I will give you one story, one weird story. I I did not see a black eye in real life. However, around 2017, I had a very vivid, you might even call it surreal dream where someone rang my doorbell. I opened the door. There was a standing at the door, looks up at me, pure black eyes, asks to come in. I tell it no. And then it opens its mouth extremely wide and latches onto my throat and rips my throat out, and I wake up. Most dreams don't stay with you, but there are always those dreams that do, and that's one of those dreams that stayed with me. And tell you what, was that some sort of a spiritual, encounter with whatever entity might be behind this? Possible. Or it's possible that it was just my overactive imagination sorting through some stuff I had heard in my waking life.
What the Christmas trees, man, for sure. Yeah, usually I don't remember my dreams per se or nightmares, but it is something I've brought up before. Is
Exactly.
it too far fetched to think maybe when somebody is seeing something that seems to be an apparition of a dogman coming in through their wall, but then when they come to, it's not there at all? Could that still necessarily be you waking up from that fog per se, right? Because it is something that seems to have relevance when it comes to dreams for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. I think that dreams can be a bit of a doorway into the other realm, but I think most of the time they're just our brains sorting through, the experiences of life and kind of cleaning out, random thoughts and memories. So yeah, it's hard to say, and I'm certainly no expert on it. Um, am I gonna tell people who claim they've seen these things that they're liars and they're just trying to get attention? No, because I wasn't there. I didn't see it. Could be that they saw something freaky. I just have a hard time coming to grips with it myself. So
The only interesting part, really, that brings any sort of life to this is the 1998 story that this gentleman originally had put out there. But
mhm.
again, he's a journalist. Has anyone spoke to him? Was this just him being creative? Right? Has anyone had a chance to see his spin on this? As far as I know, I have never heard this individual speak whatsoever. It really
Yeah,
does. Yeah.
has he recanted? We don't know. I mean, it would be interesting to follow up with them. Do you still stand by this today? Yes, no, whatever. Yeah, we just don't know, frankly.
Yes, I'm totally with you. I personally am going to put the good old check mark on this having no sort of relevance whatsoever. Also, you can just watch how it all unfolds. It's right pretty much the time frame when the internet is starting to kick off a little bit more. And in the beginning days, man, knowledge was just put up on there, but also wasn't verified necessarily. And all kinds of reasonings to point in the direction of that occurring.
Yep. Yeah. we really can't know without better evidence. And unfortunately, there is no evidence. And then today we have the issue of AI, generated videos and images, and so even if evidence comes out, it'll have to be scrutinized to be determined whether or not it's legit or not, in a way that we didn't have to deal with even 5 years ago. So that's an issue too. But yeah, I don't worry about black eye in my life. I'll tell you that. That's how I feel about it. So
Love it. Excellent stuff. Well, before we let you get back to things you need to attend to, is there anything else tonight you would like to mention about the black-eyed teenagers or anything else involving that topic?
no, I think we pretty much buried that hatchet. It's I think we put it to rest.
Preach, my friend. Excellent stuff. Well, to the audience, this will be a new weekly podcast. You will be seeing a bunch of the Midnight Society members coming over here as well. Please like, comment, subscribe, share around When Crows Speak, just like with my sister podcast, Camp Nightmare Fuel, and of course, the head honcho, Midnight Lycanthropy. Share around all that stuff, please. Let's make the algorithm recognize what's occurring. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, William.
Never a problem.